Hi.
Hello again. We start a new chapter of In Search of Christian Freedom by Franz. Chapter 15, The Greatness of the Good News. He begins with Galatians 1:6 from the Jerusalem Bible. I am astonished at the promptness with which you have turned away from the one who called you and have decided to follow a different version of the good news. Ray says it is in the good news set forth in the scriptures that Christian freedom finds its base. The very proclamation of that good news is a call to freedom. It would not be good news if it led anywhere else. Because of where it leads, it is a glorious good news, one that from its inception was a good news of great joy. Remember the words to the shepherds in Luke chapter 2 verse 10. Mm-hmm. And no finer service can be performed for people than to share that good news with them. It can bring them in far greater measure a freedom from fear, guilt, and anxiety, replacing these with a growing confidence, hope, and peace of mind and heart. To do this, however, that good news cannot be presented in an adulterated, humanly manipulated form. There is no question that Jehovah's Witnesses believe that they are part of an urgent effort to make the good news known worldwide. They believe that people's very lives depend on both hearing and accepting the message they bring. While the depth of this belief and the motivation it produces may and do vary from witness to witness, still it must at least be admitted that even as a whole, witnesses are more than mere churchgoers or passive listeners.
For most witnesses, one of the strongest proofs that the Watchtower organization is indeed the sole entity that God has approved as his instrument is the belief that this is the only organization on earth that is making known the good news of the kingdom and accomplishing the foretold witness to all the nations, that is to precede the final end. The Watchtower's teaching is that the parable of the sheep and goats and the dividing of people of all nations into two classes, with individuals' eternal destiny hanging in the balance, is now being accomplished by the door-to-door work of Jehovah's Witnesses as they distribute the Watchtower's literature, and to a greater or lesser degree make return calls. In exhorting witnesses to door-to-door activity, the organization frequently makes use of Jehovah's instructions to the visionary man with the writer's inkhorn in chapter 9 of Ezekiel's prophecy, arguing that the only way that this symbolic person could have accomplished his mission to put a mark on the forehead of those who would escape the coming destruction would have been by going to everyone, mainly by reaching them in their homes.
Here too the claim is that Jehovah's Witnesses, and only Jehovah's Witnesses, are accomplishing this marking work worldwide. The 8,800 or so anointed among them are the modern-day watchman class, and it is flatly stated that, quote, of course, those refusing to listen to Jehovah's Watchmen have no hope of survival, end of quote. Those who accept their message receive the life-saving mark in their forehead or seat of intelligence. Witnesses are told that failure to share in that work can make them blood guilty as regards those who die. All this witnessing, marking, dividing work of life or death consequence is to be fully accomplished during the lifetime of a generation already in existence in 1914. Witnesses receive a constant flow of reports of numerical growth in various countries as evidence that this is all true, that their organization is, by itself and apart from all other religions, accomplishing this crucial global task. How valid are the claims, and to what extent is the proclaimed goal realized?
So the new subheading here is, how global is the worldwide witness? From a small beginning in the United States in the late 1870s, Jehovah's Witnesses today are active in 212 countries and islands. The millions of hours spent annually in witnessing and the hundreds of millions of publications distributed in scores of languages are all clear fact. Had the Watchtower organization been content to say that it has accomplished a noteworthy international proclamation of its own message, there would be no reason whatsoever to disagree. But it goes so much beyond that, in claiming that through it, as an instrument, and through it alone, God is making the good news known to all mankind, fulfilling in this way the vision of the angel who has everlasting good news to declare as glad tidings to those who dwell on the earth, and to every nation and tribe and tongue and people. For an example of the organization's own self-image is found in the March 1st, 1985 Watchtower, in an article titled "Shedding Forth Light Amidst Earth's Gloom," dealing with chapter 60 of Isaiah's prophecy. In discussing verses 8 to 10 of this prophecy, it applies the shedding forth of light as coming particularly from 1919 onward, mentions the diminishing number of anointed witnesses, and then says on pages 16 and 20,
Quote, "This aging group grows smaller as one by one they finish their earthly course in integrity. About 9,000 now remain," and of course that number is now more like 20,000.
yeah,
"But others, numbering into the millions, are flocking like doves to their birdhouse holes or dovecotes, finding refuge in God's organization." That's all from Isaiah 60, verse 8. "They are like the flocks of doves seen in Palestine at certain seasons, flying just like a cloud, so numerous that they actually darken the sky." Next, Jehovah addresses his organization, saying, quote, "Any nation and any kingdom that will not serve you will perish, and the nations themselves will without fail come to devastation." That being Isaiah 60, verse 12. "All prideful worldly nations and other opposers will be humbled at Armageddon. Jehovah declares, I will rock all nations, and the desirable things of all the nations must come in, and I will fill this house with glory." That Haggai 2, verse 7. Persecutors, apostates, and other disrespectful opposers will be compelled to bow down, acknowledging in chagrin that Jehovah's Witnesses do indeed represent God's organization, the city of Jehovah, Zion of the Holy One of Israel. That being Isaiah 60, verses 12 to 14.
Yeah.
Well,
You should read Isaiah 60, the whole thing.
read Isaiah 60 and you can quickly see the entire chapter pertains to the restoration of Israel and the restoration of the city of Jerusalem, and they've got no right to raid it for, well, here, their identity, their proclamation, and leading up, of course, to verse 22 in chapter 60 of Isaiah, where it says Jehovah will speed it up in its own time. We heard that verse continually at assemblies, etc., where we needed some spurring on to get busier. And we wanted to link to this on your screen, a video that talks about them raiding Isaiah for their identity, Jehovah's Witnesses, Isaiah 43. But also a playlist, which was who really are Jehovah's Witnesses. As we saw in the last chapter, at the end, Ray makes the connection that the Tetragrammaton, the name Yahweh or Jehovah, is peculiarly linked to the destiny of the nation of Israel. The covenant relationship between the true God and Israel in the Old Testament, but not in the New.
Yeah.
So we want to put that on your screen, that playlist, who really are Jehovah's Witnesses, specifically the ones that raid the book of Isaiah for their paradise text. We'll put that up too. And next time we get into the numerical growth of the Watchtower, which is often cited as being the proof that God's blessing is upon his people. What does their numerical growth look like, really, compared to some other religions? And even more important, does it prove anything about them fulfilling Matthew 24, verse 14, that the good news of the kingdom will be preached in all nations. Are Jehovah's Witnesses preaching in all nations?